One minute, you're texting, laughing, maybe even planning a date, and the next, nothing. No goodbye, no explanation, just gone. Why do people ghost? What makes someone vanish like you never existed? And why does it hurt more than an actual breakup? All right, first things first. What even is ghosting? It's when someone you've been talking to, dating, or even in a relationship with suddenly disappears without any warning. No texts, no calls, no explanation, just complete radio silence. It's like they've gone full Casper, but without the whole friendly ghost thing. Ghosting can happen in any kind of relationship: romantic, platonic, professional. It's basically the emotional equivalent of walking out of a room and never coming back, leaving the other person wondering, wait, what just happened? Now, ghosting might seem like a modern problem, thanks to dating apps and texting. But the truth is, people have been pulling disappearing acts in relationships for centuries. Technology just made it a lot easier to vanish without a trace. But here's where it gets interesting. Why do people do it? I mean, is it really that hard to just say, hey, this isn't working for me, let's find out? Okay, so one of the biggest reasons people ghost is pretty simple. Fear of confrontation. Nobody likes having awkward conversations, right? Breaking up with someone or even just telling them you're not interested anymore can feel like walking into a room full of landmines. Ghosting? It's the easy way out. Instead of facing the uncomfortable conversation, people just disappear, thinking, if I don't say anything, I won't have to deal with their reaction. Spoiler. That's not how emotions work, but we'll get to that in a bit. It's called avoidant behavior, basically your brain's way of running from discomfort. Instead of dealing with the emotional fallout of ending a relationship, some people choose to ghost because it feels less painful, at least for them. For the person on the receiving end, though, oof, it's a different story. The truth is, we all have a natural instinct to avoid pain, whether it's physical or emotional. So, if someone thinks ghosting will spare them, and maybe even you, from the awkwardness of a breakup, they might convince themselves that disappearing is the kinder option. Spoiler, it's not. Another big reason people ghost: emotional immaturity. Let's face it, relationships are complicated, and not everyone is great at handling them. When someone doesn't have the emotional tools to navigate a difficult conversation or deal with their own feelings, ghosting becomes the easiest option. Think about it. Ending a relationship, or even just saying I'm not interested, requires a certain level of emotional intelligence. You've got to understand your own feelings, be honest about them, and then communicate them to someone else. That's a tall order, especially if you're someone who's not used to dealing with tough emotions. For emotionally immature people, ghosting feels like a way to avoid all that messy stuff. Why bother with an explanation when you can just disappear and avoid the whole thing altogether, right? Wrong. But that's the thought process. The problem is, emotional immaturity doesn't just hurt the person being ghosted, it also prevents the ghoster from growing and learning how to handle real-life relationship challenges. So, while they might feel like they're saving themselves from discomfort in the short term, they're missing out on the long-term benefits of, actual communication. Let's talk about the flip side. What happens when you're the one being ghosted? Spoiler alert, it's not fun. Being ghosted can leave you feeling confused, rejected, and sometimes even questioning your self-worth. The thing about ghosting is that it creates this weird sense of unfinished business. There's no closure, no explanation, just a big, fat question mark hanging over your head. And because our brains love to fill in the blanks, we start overthinking. Did I do something wrong? Was it something I said? Were they abducted by aliens? Ghosting taps into a pretty primal fear we all have: rejection. When someone disappears on you, it triggers all those insecurities you've been trying to keep in check. And because you don't have any real answers, your brain starts spiraling, looking for reasons. Psychologically, it's rough. Ghosting can mess with your self-esteem, your trust in others, and even how you approach future relationships. So, yeah, while the person ghosting might think they're sparing everyone from an awkward conversation, they're actually leaving a pretty painful emotional mess in their wake. Here's the thing, ghosting isn't new, But technology has made it way easier. Back in the day, if you wanted to disappear from someone's life, you'd have to, avoid them in person, dodge their phone calls, maybe even move to another town. Now, you can just stop replying to texts. Easy. Dating apps and social media have made it so simple to just vanish. No more awkward face-to-face conversations or long breakup phone calls. You can just hit unmatch, block, or ghost, without ever having to look someone in the eye. And let's be real, technology has kind of trained us to expect instant gratification. If you're texting someone and they don't reply within an hour, your brain's like, hello? Did you fall off the face of the earth? Ghosting taps into that same impatience. Instead of taking the time to explain why they're not interested, people just ghost because, well, it's quicker and less emotionally taxing. But just because it's easy doesn't mean it's right. In fact, technology might make ghosting easier, but it's also making relationships way more complicated. Alright, so you've probably heard of ghosting, but have you heard of soft ghosting? It's like ghosting's passive-aggressive cousin. Soft ghosting is when someone doesn't fully disappear, but they kind of fade away. Maybe they still like your posts on social media, or send you a random emoji now and then, but they're not engaging in any real conversation. It's like they're keeping you on the hook without actually being involved. Frustrating, right? Soft ghosting can be even more confusing than full-on ghosting because it leaves you in this weird limbo. You're not sure if they're still interested or if they're just too lazy to fully disappear. It's like they're giving you just enough attention to keep you around, but not enough to actually maintain a relationship. Spoiler, this is not a good strategy for healthy relationships. If you're not interested, be clear. Soft ghosting might seem like a way to avoid hurting someone's feelings, but honestly, it just prolongs the confusion. Let's talk about closure. When a relationship ends, most of us want some kind of explanation, right? We want to understand why things didn't work out so we can make peace with it and move on. That's where closure comes in. Closure is like the final chapter in a book. It helps us make sense of the story and put it to rest. Without it, we're left with all these unanswered questions, and our brains hate that. We're wired to seek out answers. So when someone ghosts us, it's like the book just ended halfway through the story. The problem with ghosting is that it denies us the closure we need. We're left trying to fill in the blanks, which can lead to overthinking, self-doubt, and let's be honest, a whole lot of obsessing over what went wrong. Psychologically, closure helps us process our emotions and move on. Without it, we can get stuck in this loop of replaying the relationship in our heads, trying to figure out what happened. And let me tell you, that's not a fun place to be. Speaking of closure, if you're still with me, we're vibing, right? So don't ghost me. Hit that subscribe button and let's keep this conversation going. Trust me, we've got a lot more to talk about when it comes to relationships, psychology, and all the quirky things that make us human. And hey, while you're at it, give that notification bell a little tap. That way, you'll never miss another deep dive into topics that make you go, I never thought about it like that. Alright, back to the ghosting saga. Alright, let's get real for a second. Is there any way to prevent ghosting? Honestly, not really. I know, that's not what you want to hear, but ghosting is all about the other person's emotional maturity, not you. That being said, there are a few things you can do to reduce the chances of getting ghosted. First, communicate openly and honestly from the start. If you set the tone for clear communication, it might encourage the other person to do the same. Second, pay attention to red flags. If someone seems flaky or avoids deep conversations, that could be a sign that they're not emotionally ready for a relationship. It doesn't guarantee they'll ghost you, but it's something to keep in mind. And finally, don't be afraid to ask for clarity. If someone's being distant or non-communicative, it's okay to check in and ask what's going on. It won't always prevent ghosting, but it can give you a better sense of where things stand. But at the end of the day, if someone's going to ghost, they're going to ghost. The important thing is to remember that it's a reflection of them, not you. So, you've been ghosted. Now what? First of all, take a deep breath. I know it's frustrating, confusing, and maybe even a little hurtful, but you're going to be okay. Step 1. Don't take it personally. Ghosting says more about the ghoster than it does about you. It's not a reflection of your worth or how awesome you are. It's a sign that they didn't know how to handle the situation maturely. Step 2. Resist the urge to reach out. I know, it's tempting to send that, "Hey, what happened?" text. But trust me, if someone's ghosted you, they've already made their choice. Reaching out might just make you feel worse if they don't respond. So save yourself the emotional roller coaster. Step 3. Focus on you. I know it sounds cliche, but now's the time to prioritize yourself. Hang out with friends, dive into a new hobby, or binge watch your favorite show, whatever makes you feel good. And finally, give yourself time to heal. Ghosting can sting, but it's not the end of the world. You'll move on, and you'll find someone who's emotionally mature enough to communicate like a grown-up. At the end of the day, ghosting is one of those things that says way more about the person doing the ghosting than the person being ghosted. It's a reflection of their inability to communicate, their fear of conflict, or their emotional immaturity. So, if you've been ghosted, remember, it's not about you. You deserve someone who respects you enough to communicate, even when it's uncomfortable. And if you're ever tempted to ghost someone, maybe take a deep breath and try having that conversation instead. It's not easy, but it's worth it. Until next time, keep your communication open, your self-esteem high, and your ghosting tendencies, well, ghosted.